Hello and welcome everyone to the Ed3 Podcast, where we explore the future of learning. I'm Scott Meyer, and as always on Fridays, I'm joined with the Zen Master of Education, the founder of City as a School, and our correspondent calling in from London. Hello, Serj.
Hello from London.
I meant to say London calling like a Eurovision, but I messed that up. And that's a deep cut for our American listeners. That's a kind of a weird thing. So we're so excited to have time together here. And we just started talking immediately, and I wanted to just hit record because we were just talking about someone you just got off the phone with, which I think is a great lead into this week's kind of topic of skills for the future. So tell us who you were just talking to and what inspired in you.
Yeah, so I just got off a call with a 12-year-old called Calder. Calder is living in Florida, and he was recommended to me by a friend in the City as a School network. I was like, hey, this Calder needs some help building some crazy project. You know, he's working on basically a augmented reality, virtual reality version of Slack. So it's like team collaboration, but with 3D. So you can see your team members. There's no text unless you like want to in a side channel, but it's mostly like 3D spatial interactions that you're having with them. You can kind of compare this to like Meta stuff, but it looks better. I think it looks better actually.
Now at a $10 billion budget.
Yeah, right. So yeah, like, and this just got all of my cogs turning about like how when you let young people loose, freedom to create and like let them follow their passions, they just churn out amazing things. Given the right like guide rails and like emotional regulation support and like wellness, they can achieve amazing things if you just like let them get on with it.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think that came out this week. We did a workshop. And one thing we're excited about here at Ed3 is that we're now launching a Discord channel. And I would think about it less as a typical Discord channel where you go and have threaded conversations, more of like a Reddit or bulletin board. So what are the questions people are thinking about and adding in your 2 cents? So we'll put a link to that in the show notes. But we invited folks in, and one of the questions we talked about was, what are the skills we need to be teaching students now to thrive in the next 5 to 10 years when they exit school? So if you're a middle school or high schooler, what are the things we're not teaching that we should? And that question or that story you just told me, like kind of brought that to mind. So before I tell you what we discussed, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what are kind of these skills. And obviously with City as a School, you're thinking a lot about this, bringing in people teaching different skills. So what are the things we're not teaching now that we should to prepare these students?
Sure. Yeah. My general like take on this is that the future of skills is a moving target. And so trying to like predict what to teach them is helpful, but the average skills half-life is going to be about 4 years soon. You know, like it was really a cool thing to be a software developer, and now that's being challenged. I'm not saying software developers are not essential. Like ChatGPT isn't replacing any of that in a major way soon. But, you know, think of like UI design, storyboarders, like skills are just kind of, the jobs are falling out of the sky. And this is going to just increase basically over time. So like trying to predict what skills is coming up next is a moving target, which is difficult to hit. But what we can be pretty certain on is that like being able to be adaptable, to learn, relearn, look at something from a different angle, take information and be interdisciplinary and from one domain and map it to another domain. These are just going to be like core fundamental things that we need to get right.
Yeah.
And so teaching people how to learn, how to know and switch contexts, view things from different angles and have agency across all of that. I think that's like where I really come at things.
Yeah. That's, it's not far off from where we were. I think we kind of broke it down into 3 categories of like mindsets, abilities, and approaches. And mindset's exactly what you're talking about, right? Where we talked a lot about code switching. Like, I don't think there's going to be less inputs, right? So the ability to switch between industries, between tasks, taking knowledge from one bucket, bringing it to the other, I think will be a really important skill. Making decisions without full information. We more casually call it like the bullshit detector as well. Like, the ability to parse information and like use that information, I guess, to make decisions. We talk about specific skills, that people wish that they had learned, things like sales, entrepreneurship, Figma, storytelling, right? And like you said, those could change but that was kind of interesting. Just like also the specificity. If like you need a job in the next 12 months, here's what I wish I would have known. But the one that really stuck out to me when we talked about approaches, and I know you all have some thoughts on this, is this concept of thinking algorithmically. So this is really interesting. We had Austin Griffith there, who is the founder of Scaffold ETH and a really big educator in the Ethereum world. And he talked about how in the last 6 months, as an accomplished Ethereum developer, he's completely changed his workflow because of AI. And he's now essentially copy and pasting and conversing with machines. And his take was that, in the next 5 to 10 years, all of our interfaces are going to move this direction. So if you want to start your dishwasher, right, you're going to have like a mini conversation perhaps, or it may be more likely if you need to fix something, your water heater goes out. Like, you're not going to just call the plumber. You're going to first go through a dialogue back and forth with a machine to try to figure it out. So I'm curious about what you think about this term, which was new to me, which was thinking algorithmically. So thinking in a way that like is kind of if-then statements, right? So yeah, I'll throw that to you from there and see what your thoughts are.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think all of these things like bundle under something else, which like a term that I've been trying to capture everything that we might need to know. Like I mentioned a bunch of like different parts there, like looking at things from different angles and like, transfer, moving from one context to another. I think what we have to do is kind of think of humans as idea to reality creatures. We turn ideas into reality, meaning like you have small ideas like pick up the cup or like make tea. And then you have big ideas like start a city. And all of these things like have to make use of the imagination and then use you as an instrument to get it into the world. And so in terms of like this way that technology has been interacting with us for a while, like all the way from like holding a spear to like LLMs, these all augment our idea to reality process. And so thinking algorithmically, it can be probably hooked back to like how Papert used to talk about like logic and, logic skills and programmatic skills in like Mindstorms in these early books. So it's always been like helpful to think like that. Really getting people to think programmatically, that's a cool way of capturing it. I think there's other aspects to this as well. Like I break it down into 3 parts. It's like, how can I support your agency? So your ability to know what to do when you don't know what to do. And this is like a bunch of dispositions like curiosity, hope and optimism, belonging in the group. Like if it's a new project, you need new collaborators, creativity, your ability to regulate emotions. These are all like super important right now. Then there's like building learning relationships and being able to say, okay, I don't know how to do this thing. I need to build a learning relationship with mentors, LLMs, chatbots, a teacher that I just met, or like the local guy who works the makerspace, right? So building learning relationships is also augmenting this idea to reality. And then there's also this final piece, which is like systems thinking and complex problem solving. Just the ability to think in terms of systems is more and more important, right? Like you're not going to be very good at using an LLM if you don't say like, hey, dishwasher, I tried to put this other object in and that object got stuck in that one. And now tell me how to fix this problem. It's the same as like saying, hey, LLM, I had this bit of code and then I took this piece of code. The interaction was off. So can you tell me how the interaction could be fixed? And so thinking in systems, thinking programmatically, all of these things are just like, how do you increase like the aperture of our idea to reality stack? And those are like the terms that I think of it in.
Yeah, I love the learning relationship. And really that's what we have with great teachers, right? Is you have that relationship of back and forth, which is why people probably remember it, is that it's people that they connected with or that, unlocked something they didn't have before. So that's really interesting. Well, we're going to do more of these workshops. So if anyone listening out there, you can subscribe at ed3, the number 3.gg, and we'll tell you about those events. And of course, we'll share those in the Discord. So Serj, what are you kind of thinking about and watching headed into this weekend? Thoughts on your mind that you've been thinking about and working on?
Yeah, so we're going to be running some weekly or bi-weekly, we haven't decided yet, gatherings for school leadership and educators to show up and play with some ChatGPT, with some Midjourney, and basically have an open and safe space for educators to become learners again. From there, we're really hoping to design some curriculum and some scaffolding and some follow-up courses basically for any schools who are trying to understand how they can adapt their pedagogy and their practice and maybe even their assessment around these new tools. Everything I just talked about, is like idea to reality process, how to support learner agency, how to support learning relationships and complex problem solving. We're just making a bunch of content basically as follow-up to those workshops. So come along for the workshops and I'll definitely send you the link to send to people because the goals of education are changing and we're trying to figure out how best to support the new goals, which we've talked about previously might not just be standardized tests, right?
Yeah, there's like parallel work going on here where it's, first rethinking what's this for, right? Like, why do we have education? What should be the outcomes? And then also just improving what we have, so you're not throwing out the baby with the bathwater and, taking the action you can in the short term. So I think something like the workshop's great where it's like, here's something you can bring in the classroom, you can write a lesson plan on, you can expose your students, but then also we can engage in these meta discussions about in the next half decade or more, like where are we going to be and where should we be going? So yeah, love having people join us in those discussions. And as always, jump on, subscribe if you're on YouTube or on the podcast, wherever you might be. And we're going to keep having these conversations. So Serj, really excited to check in every Friday and discuss some of these big ideas. We'll be back next Friday talking about whatever is coming up in the week and in our minds. Any final thoughts here as we head to the Easter weekend?
Nope. Just have a good weekend. It's sunny here in London. I hope everyone's taking some time off for Easter and enjoying some time with lovely friends and family.
That's right. Yep. Find your learning partners, find your network that's going to help you in this wild west of education. And we'll be here to try to guide you through it. So we'll see you on the next episode.